really tonight's sugyas is really more about Metzia sugyas than Shua sugyas, which is actually a relief. We're up to the Tani, which is 1, 2, 3, kind of from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines from the bottom. You see that? Memlas about a memorav. Tani, we learned. The Gunami Beis Haish has to be stolen from the house of the individual. The Lomi Beis Shoel, this comes to preclude a theft from the house of a Shoel. Now, if the Shoel, meaning, if an object is stolen from the house of a Shoel, there is no kefil. By any other, good evening. By any other, we just started. We're the pay of Memarav. By any other shomer, there is kefil. Now the shaila is why there is kefil by any other shomer. But if you steal something from the house of shomer chinam, a shomer socher, a socher, there is kefil. You pay double. And the reason for that is either one of two reasons, which we'll see presently. But not from the house of a shoel, because a shoel, manav shach, it's not his. It's not his, and he's not really a shomer. A shoel is not really a shomer. A shomer is somebody who's safekeeping and has certain liabilities. A shoel has total liability. So therefore he's called, the way the Ridbaz puts it, he has achrayus, not shiur shmira. He's responsible. It's not that he's a shomer, he's responsible for it. So therefore it's not really his. And on the other hand, the owner is going to get back his full object anyway, regardless of what happens, because even if it's stolen, the shoel is chayiv under any circumstance whatsoever. I don't know. Now I'm saying it over. I see I'm not saying it over clearly enough, but it'll become clear if I go further and read it. For all impossible, right? All possible loss. Yeah, shoel's chayiv, no, sure. Mesa machmas malacha. Yeah, but that's part of the sheila. That's a definition. It's not the same thing. So
because he's responsible for all possible losses, he might want to control.
No, it means that therefore he's not.
Greater liability.
Let me read the Gemara line further, and then we'll see if it becomes clear. Time it's only stolen from the house of the person not for the house of the shoel. Umar, let's say, maybe also that if it's stolen from the house of a nosei socher or a shomer socher or a socher, the same halacha. Says when he came to shmiroso alav, since shmir is upon him, Kamishu, I'm going to read like Ridbaz first, Kamishu be'olav. He changes the second olav to be'olav. In other words, since that the shomer, so they're now like the owners. They have a vested interest in the object. A shoel has no vested interest in the object because he's totally responsible for no matter what. So there is no shmira is not considered by him to be a form of ownership. It's a form of restitution, not a form of ownership. A shomer has a vested interest in an object because if he keeps it the proper way, he's off the hook. So therefore, he has a vested interest in making sure that he gets it back, and that's why if somebody steals from him, they have to pay kefil. But a shoel, it doesn't make a difference whether he gets it back or not. There's no way he can get over off the hook. He's always responsible. So therefore, Lamaisa, he has no vested interest. So therefore, it's considered to be not a not an owner, but rather purely a person who's holding on to the object temporarily, and therefore he gets no kefil. Okay, I see from the look on your faces that makes no sense. I am telling over the Ridbaz. So let me tell you the Shaitar says. He says, because he said he learns it the way it's written in front of us over here, Olav. And he says, when they came into Shmiras Olav, since the Shmir is on the Shomer, Kamishu Olav, it's as if the owner still has it. Olav, the second Olav, means not the Shomer, but the original owner. It means that the original owner stands to lose something. Because everybody can go out, or every other shomer get off the hook. So therefore, no matter where it is, it's still considered to be as if it's in his house, and therefore a kefil is warranted. But if it's in the house of a shoel, the owner doesn't stand to lose anything. Because he'll get restitution no matter what happens. Right? Because the only time he doesn't get restitution is Mesa Machmas Malacha. That's a different situation. That's where it's out in the field working. Or if it's in the house of the Shomer, the Shoel, he's always going to get restitution. So therefore he has no vested interest left in this object. Because even the object gets lost or stolen, he couldn't care less. He'll get restitution no matter what. So therefore, he doesn't retain, in essence, when it's in the house of Shoel, any vested interest in the object. So therefore, there's no kefil when it's stolen from the Shoel's house. Does that make any more sense to you?
Are we saying that the Shoel that
it suspends the ownership of the original owner, and he himself doesn't become the owner. Right, because he eventually has to give back whatever he has. That's what Shara Third Soul learns it. By everybody else, the original ownership is not suspended, because every other Shomer doesn't have complete and total responsibility, so therefore the original ownership is left in some way, shape, or form. Where Shoel gets it, the original ownership is suspended, because right now the Shoel has complete and total responsibility. You have to say that it's not the Shoel's because eventually he has to give it back, so there is no kefil in that situation. Now it makes a little bit sense? Okay. So that's basically what the Shara Torah says. Okay? Again, love. But whenever it's only a state of shmir or kamishu love, it's still relevant to the first guy. But here, there's not a state of shmir anymore because it's in the domain of a shoel. Now, continuing on with shmir. Shatim Tziloimer, when you analyze this, Shatim Tziloimer, Sholosh Parshas, and there are 3 Parshas in Sefer in Parshas Mishpatim dealing with the topics of Shmira. Hatachton, the last Parshas, dealing with a Shoel. V'emtzoy, a borrower. The Emtzoy, the middle one's dealing with Nosi Sochar, a paid watcher, Vasocher, and a renter. While Yonah, the first part is Shomer Chinam. Shoel, if he shenenes hakol, since he gets total hanoah, he has usage for free, no less. Misham is he pays everything, right? Under any circumstance. No say sochar, somebody who's a paid watcher, a sochar and a renter. Vishenena miktas, umahana miktas, since he's getting some benefit and providing some benefit. Nishba miktas, on some things he takes the shvul and gets off the hook. Misham miktas and pays for other things. Shomer China, a person watches for free and doesn't use it. Shein lo hanoya, doesn't have any benefit. Nishba, all he has to do is take shvuz yotzi and get off the hook. Mao nishba. What shvuz does he take? Lo pashat, he takes a shvuz that it wasn't posher. That's what it says. Akol bar pesha. He takes a shvuz that he wasn't posher. Now the Yerushalmi has a fascinating question. Now I don't remember the Bavli and shvuz, as you know that I've told you that many times already. But I certainly don't remember this. Okay? Hayu Adim. Let's see if our Bucky and Shasi remembers this. Hayu Adim. What? Hayu Adim. It says here Achim, but the Shadis only Bas both change it to Adim. Hayu Adim. Yodim. They're witnesses who know Shlo Pasha. They know the Shomer Chinam didn't commit a pshir. They know that. That's not an issue. Then the question is like this. Now here the Shadis changes the last word my and expands upon it. Shkoyach. These are not just these are tall. These are not talls. These are the big size, right? Thank you. Okay. Okay. So the question is like this, Mr. Zuger at the bottom, Mem and Ralph. We didn't make much progress here, as usual. A guy we have a Shomer Chinam, but Shomer Chinam, he really has taken oath that he was not negligent, right? That's the oath the Torah made him take. What if he has testimony that he's not negligent? Can they make him take an oath? And here Shara Yisrael throws in the following line: Can I make him take an oath plucked out of the air, which is take an oath that you never thought of stealing my object? Mind you, who's making whom take the oath? The mafki, the guy who gave the object for safekeeping to a shomer chinam, to an unpaid watchman, is making the watchman take the oath. Now it seems to be a very unfair oath, right? The Torah doesn't dictate this oath. But the question is, what?
If he had such thoughts,
yeah. True. But you see, what Gemara is trying to say is that when it says, when the Torah gives the right to impose an oath, maybe it's not just a situational thing, but in other words, based on the relevance of the oath, but a right of a person who gives knowledge safekeeping to keep the safekeeper in line to administer an oath of his choice, even if that oath is an outlandish one. There's a logic to that. It's the right to require an oath, even if you can't require payment, in order to keep the guy honest. You can't buy into that?
Sounds like the question is what is the source of the shiur? Is the source of the shiur that which the Torah imposes upon you, or is that which the Baal Boss seeks to impose upon you?
Well, obviously it would be the Torah granting the Baal Boss the right to impose it.
It's more than that. It's like you see the signs, the speeding signs over New York, or the parking signs. Don't even think of parking here. You ever see that in videos? No. Don't even think of parking here. So that's the same thing. Don't even think of letting it be stolen from you. Because if you do...
No, and you thinking of stealing it. You don't even think of stealing it personally.
Yeah, but by knowing that you might have to have
an oath.
Have to give an oath. So it's like it's saying, don't even think of...
Right. It keeps the guy honest. That's what really you need. We need something to keep the guy honest. That's what the Torah would be saying.
Now, what I'm asking, though, is if there are witnesses that will tell you that you weren't
Negligent.
why would you have to give an oath?
On your thought process. They didn't see you being negligent, but maybe you sinned in your heart.
Even though that's hard to...
Like Jimmy Carter.
No, it's if there's no witnesses. I can understand that you have to give shiur.
No, we're talking about where there is witnesses. No.
No,
so that's cool for the point. Maybe the Torah gave the mafkid the right to make the guy take an oath in order to keep him honest. Even if it's an outlandish oath, even their witnesses, it's unnecessary, but still, you can devise an oath. Okay, so you guys don't like this question. I thought it was a very cool question. I've seen it many times. Okay. Yeah. So let's turn the page. Page 80. Memo base. Let's turn out from here. What if you found the thief? The thief cannot pay for his theft. And he stole from a shomer. It should say here, instead of Mal Shomer, it should say, according to Shart, so Minayin Shelo Yomar Lo. How do we know that he can't turn out to the shomer and say, well, you take a shvuah? In other words, I caught the thief, but he's poor. I can't get anything out of him. Let me try and get something out of you instead by making him take a shvuah. Deep pockets, right? How do you know you can't say to him, Bovi Shavali, Shlosata Veinecha Bolagos law, that you can't say to the shomer, come and take an oath to me that you didn't ever think of stealing it. So it should say here, Talmud Lomar, it said Nishmin Minata, because the Pasuk says, if the ganav is not found, then you can have the shomer take an oath. But if the ganav is found, butter, then you can't require the shomer to take an oath. So we want to say, the Ridbaz explains here at some length, that, brings on this from the Halacha, that here the same thing is true. If you have Eidim that the Shomer Chinam fulfilled his liability, you can't make up an oath out of thin air. Okay, the way you guys wanted to say, you can't administer an oath just because of the right to administer an oath. There's no such thing. Just like in the case where you can't collect from the Ghana, you can't transfer the obligation to have the oath taken by the Shomer. So too, if you have Eidim that the Shomer did his job properly, you cannot make the Shomer then take an oath under those circumstances. Okay? Says the Gemara, Ksiv, it says, Kiten Yisrael, we're in the fourth line on Memo base. Ksiv Kiten Yisrael, Chamoro Shoro Seva Goimer. If you give your friend by a Shomer Socher, by a paid watchman or a Socher or a renter, give him an ox or a lamb, a goat, etc. to watch, Shvuas Hashem Tiyavich, there'll be a shvuah between the two of them. Gneva. Now it goes on. The pasuk goes on. It says, "What about if it's stolen from the shomer?" the shomer tzachar. It says in gonovi gonoiv meimo. If it's stolen from him, then what's the halacha by shomer tzachar? If it's stolen from him, what does it have to do? It's in the pasuk. What does it say about shomer tzachar that if it's stolen from him, you have to do? He has to do. He's got to pay. If it's stolen from a shomer tzachar, he's got to pay. Okay. So it says more gneva in meimo, and it really doesn't say im gonovi gonev. It says ve'im gonovi gonev, and the extra vav in ve'im is Rabbis Aveda comes to include lost objects. So the shomer tzachar pays. Akadu kraki, that makes sense. Rabbi Kivudash extra vavs. Rabbi Shmuel says tibatar klash meyon and the p. We don't dash extra vavs. Tan Rabbi Shmuel says the logic. My gneva shekrev lointin. If by a theft which is close to an act of God, Atar Mishayim say a shomer tzachar, a paid watchman, and a resocha renter pays. Aveda, a theft she'enikov loans him, which is not so much an act of God. It's not so much kabel. Lokoshka, it's not a kavachomer that the shomer pays. Period. So therefore, we say the shomer soul's got to pay from a logic. Now, Anksi b'shoel. It says only by shoel. The only time you pay is b'shvura if the animal breaks. Aved if the animal is lost, ugneva and stolen. Minayin. How do we know it's true that the shoel pays? The deal. It's a logic. Umayim nesis socher paid watchman socher and a renter. Shem mishalmim shvura umesa. They don't pay in the case of the animal broke or died. Mishalmim gneva, they pay if the animal stolen or lost. Shoel let borrower. Shem mishalem upay shvura, even the animal broke down or Mason died. Ain't no din shalem aveda gneva. It's not covered that he pays for loss and for theft. The title learn concerning this. I raise the kavachom shel of true. Is a kavachom which cannot be refuted. Okay, shvuya minayin. Now, what about shvuya, an animal which is taken to captivity by a shoel? How do I know that he's liable in that case? So it said captivity, kidnapped. The animal's kidnapped. Count out. Rustled. Okay. What? Steer in Dallas yesterday went for $600,000. Did you see the steer? Didn't look particularly exciting. Didn't look particularly exciting to me. Yes. Okay. Yeah. That steer is certainly worth a lot more than most people. Yes. So I forgot what its name was. What was the steer's name? Do you remember what its name? Shorty or something. Shorty, yeah. They have to slaughter it. Yeah. I think steers, you can't, aren't they castrated anyway? Yeah. Yes, right. They have to be slaughtered. Yeah. They made a television commercial out of it. All right. He doesn't know Stone Cold Austin is. You see, some sports you don't know. It's a madrega. Okay? Okay. All right. Okay. Make sure you watch the replay of the 1978 Olympics. Okay, Shvuya Minayin. High by Shvuya is shows Chayev. So it says Martala, it's a Xer Shabbat. Says the Gemara, Never Kav Nishbar Omes. It says by the Shoel, it's liable if the animal breaks or dies. And it says by Shomer Tzachar or Shomer and a renter, they're potter if it's nishbar, umeso nishbar. And there it says nishbar as well. Umalal shvuyim moim by a renter, the kidnapping is mentioned. Afkan shvuyim moim, so to buy a shoel includes shvuya and he's liable on a shvuya. Says that makes sense. Karakivu makes Shavos, even if there's no mufne word. There's no extra word in any of these psukim. Where's the extra word? But Rabbi Shmuel doesn't make Shavos unless you have an extra word. Where's the extra word? Taka don't have one. So Rabbi Shmuel learns like Rabbi Nosson. What did Rabbi Nosson say? He says, "Oh, the rabbis is a shvuya." It says, "Umeis o nishbar." The O includes taken to captivity. Okay, the O teaches shvuya. Meir says, Meir who says like the Yerushalmi when you have to say do me no. We learn from the place to which you derived the Yerushalmi. If that's the case, maybe let's say other elements of Shomer Sochar gets left alone. So that Shomer Sochar takes a oath and is exempt on onsin. So too should be exempt here with an oath on onsin. This is Shomer Sochar. We know it's not true. It's not exempt by any oath. Says my oath Rabbi Nosson. So it says we know we even according to Rabbi Shmuel we have to learn like Rabbi Nosson. So Mer Omeis Rabbis is Hashviyah. We don't learn Yerushalmi. We learn that the O comes to teach us that also the animal taken into captivity. Says my Rabbi Yudan boy. Rabbi Yudan asks the following question: Tono Tanas Ganam Shel Onsim. If the guy, the Shomer Sochar, claimed that it was stolen by an individual or force which compelled him to give it over. So it says the Gemara, Maushi Shalem Amalo Balis Mizuya. The Shomer Sochar says, Alisa Mizim Ram Ban came when Nochel took a Maushi Shanto Shlomei Kefil. Shown to the Peitar Shlomei Kefil in that case of being compelled to give it up or not. Yosir said in Kini, if he was liable to pay in that case, so Nisne that we should have mentioned in our Mishnah, beginning of our parak, that a Shomer Sochar and a Socher, that the Shomer Sochar who's paid to watch and a Socher a tenant, it should say instead of the Tani, Mishamet Tashlumei Kefel, they pay Tashlumei Kefel, I say a Shomer Sochar Socher Vasholel. Okay, I made a mistake. It's not going back in our Mishnah. No, this way back in our Mishnah. Back 4 lines. Rabbi Boy, Tana Tanas Ganav Shaloitim. You claim. I think I said that story about. No, I don't remember. I said story about a Shoel or a Shomer Sochar. What? Okay, so I was right. I just lost I lost my track. I don't know exactly what happened. I lost my track. Third time about show. Later by Tanas kind of shalomsin. The Shomer Socher, he said, listen, it was stolen from me by armed bandits. Pancho Villa came and took it away from me, right? So he says, Mao Shishan Tashlumi Kefel. Shalomsi, does he pay Tashlumi Kefel in case of onus or not? What's critical here, now I remember what I forgot. What's cool is here, it turns out he was lying. He himself was lying. Does he pay Tashlumi Kefil or not? Okay? He wanted to get it, because normally we say, if you say it's stolen, so you'll get the Kefil. But you have to pay the nifgat, the mafkid, or one payment. If you ever find the Ganav, you'll get the Kefil. If you lied, and you were telling Tainas Ganav, then you doesn't make a difference by a shomer socher or a renter, because got to pay anyway, right? By a shomer chinam, if you lied, then he himself has paid double, because a shomer chinam gets off the hook. If an unpaid watcher gets off the hook, if he tainas geneva naveda. So if he lied, so he himself has paid double. By a shomer socher, he doesn't have to pay double because he's not off the hook. He has to pay anyway. But what if he tainas a taina which wouldn't have got him off the hook? A shomer socher, which is this taina over here. He was stolen by listim mizuyin, was stolen by armed bandits. Okay? So then that would have gotten him off the hook. Turned out he lied. Does he now have to pay double? So the Gemara says no. So sorry. Says the Gemara, in Kani, if he would have to pay double, Nisa, that our Mishnah should have mentioned Shomer Socher v'Socher, or Shomer Socher and Socher. It should be, instead of the Tani, it should be Mishalmi Tashlumei Kefel. That they do pay Tashlumei Kefil sometimes when they claim donuts and they were lying. And it doesn't say that, so it must be that you never, ever have to pay Kefil as a Shomer Socher or a Socher. Okay? So it says more, Lo Matzino B'Nosei Socher B'Socher Shem Shalim Tashlumei Kefil. And actually, it's a Vitani. Lo Matzino B'Nosei Socher B'Socher Shem Shalim Tashlumei Kefil. We never found such a thing. So it must be that Lamaisa, there is no kefel, even when they claim those stolen by armed bandits. Shakti still takes out the whole next line, because skips to Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina said another proof that a shomer socher is potter from kefel. Even he claims listim mizuyan, Yimar Mavkain, if you would say that he's chai of kefel in a case of listim mizuyan, so if we claim listim mizuyan, then our kavachomer from before, from fall down. What was the kavachomer we made before? We said that we said it by a shomer socher and a socher who don't ever have to pay. 1 second. Right. We said that a shomer socher is always more lenient than a shoel, and therefore we wanted to say that if something is true by a shomer socher, it's certainly true by a shoel. Because we wanted to say shomer socher is always more lenient, because shomer socher pays by less incidents than by a shoel does, right? But if you're going to say that there's shaykh to such a thing as tashlumei kefil by a shomer socher, so then there's one side in which a shomer socher is actually more severe than a shoel. Now, a shoel never has kefil, and a shomer socher does have kefil. So since we said before, it's kavachomer she'en lo tshuva, that whatever applies to you have to pay by a shomer socher, you have to pay by a shoel, because it's by definition, shoel is more severe. We're a shomer socher ever to have to pay kefil, that would cast an aspersion on that alcohol kavachomer. We might say no. Sometimes shomer socher or socher is more severe because sometimes they pay kefil. So it must be that they never pay kefil. In order to avoid, before we made a kavachomer, which we said that shoel is always more severe than shomer socher. If there would be a case in which shomer socher would pay kefil, by that whole kavachomer would fall off, because there would be a case in which shomer socher is more severe. Because there would be a case in which he pays kefil, and we know a borrower never pays kefil. Therefore, the Gemara's conclusion that it must be that even where he lied and he claimed lista mezuyin, and it turns out now there wasn't the lista mezuyin, there still is no payment of kefil. Okay? Says more weiter. Do Yachal Meimarle, this Gemara is about to explain. Gemara itself explains it. Do Yachal Meimarle, a guy can disrupt your kavachor by telling you, ha! Matino b'noisi socha v'asocha, we find by pay watcher and a socha should be the mishami tashlumi kefil, that they pay kefil. Tom Rabbi Shol, as opposed to the shoyel, it should be they ain't no mishami tashlumi kefil, doesn't pay tashlumi kefil. He doesn't pay tashlumi kefil no matter what. The Tanya law raised the kavachor shein lo tshuva. Before we made a kavachor, we said if a shvuya, a captive animal, you have to pay by shomer socher, which is less severe kavachor, that you have to pay by shoyel, which is more severe. But if there's such a thing as kefil, especially shvuya is by least the mezuyan, even the chapis is preparing. Shvuya is by least the mezuyan, right? Who takes an animal kidnap? Pancho Villa, he kidnaps animals, right? So therefore, where's your kavachomer? Adarabba, maybe I'll say a shomer socher is chay on shvuya, because if he lies about it, he has to pay kefil, as opposed to a shoyel who never pays kefil. So maybe they're taka, he's potter on shvuya, he's potter on Pancho Villa situations. So therefore, they have to say, in order to maintain the kavachomer, to preserve that, you have to say that a shomer socher is never ever chayav kefil, and therefore it's never ever more severe than a shoel. Only that way can you sustain your kavah chomer. Okay. Says the Gemara, Atmar, new thing. And this again is something which I don't remember at all from the Bavli, and I don't think it's in the Bavli. Atmar, you say Ba'alavi Mola Yishalim. It says by Shoel. If the master's working, you'll remember this. If the master is working together with the shoal, the shoal's off the hook. Even if he's not working with him, he's there at the time, he's off the hook. Right? Remember that? Ba'alavi Mola Yishalim. So Ma'ushe Shava. Can you make the shoal take a shvur that he wasn't posher? In other words, you were there with him. Can you make him take a shvur that he wasn't negligent? You had your back turned for him. Can you make him take a shvur that at that moment he wasn't negligent? Ever heard such a question? No. It's a new question. As far as I know, it's only the Yerushalmi. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zera Mar Nishba. Takis got to take a shvur. Achin Rabbi Lo both said Tarveo. Normally they both said Eidon Nishba. There is no shvur. Masizim B'Sar Rabbi Chin and Rabbi Lo. First you have Bryce which goes already to Chin Rabbi Lo. It says it's the Kikalod, and at the bottom changes it to Umash Vuya Shvura. Shvuya Mesa. Even a case where the animal breaks, is taken captive and dies, Shem P'tur B'Noisi Socher. Where the paid watchman and the renter are exempt. V'ashoyel b'bailin potter, and the guy who borrows, right? And the bailin works with him, the master comes out with him to work, is exempt. Shelo b'bailin. If the master doesn't come out to work with him, chayev, the shoyel is liable. Avedo gneva, loss and theft. Shein chayavin, where you're liable if you're no socher, you're a paid watchman or socher renter. Lo koshkin is not kavachomer, b'shoyel b'bailin potor, that if you borrow and the master comes along, that you're exempt. Shelo b'bailin chayev, and the master does not come along, you are liable. Now, manar pshitu shu nishba, according to the opinion which holds, you definitely have to take a shvua. Tzrichole sheyishalim. Why does it say in the Brisa that sometimes? Why does it say in the Brisa you sometimes even pay by shmir b'bailin? This Brisa says if the bailin goes out with you, you never ever pay. It's not true. According to Rabbi Zera, sometimes you do pay because you have to take a shvua that you weren't posher, that you weren't negligent. And if you can't make that shvua, then what do you have to do? Even the shoel b'bailin, it's got to pay. How come it's not mentioned here? From the fact that the Gemara, this price does not make such a distinction. Then say even by shmir b'bailin, shoel b'bailin, Sometimes you pay and sometimes you don't. It must be doesn't hold of that distinction. On the other hand, Rabbi Yehuda said, "Mastisa fine Bryce Mishael Rabbi Zera." This Bryce Rabbi Zera says you do have to take such a fool. Shoel Shechmi. It says a Shoel Shechmi Atayra Alav. The Shoel, the Torah was more severe with him. B'Bailim Pot, or if the master comes out with him, he's exempt. Shlo B'Bailim, if the master does not come out with him, Chayiv is liable. No, say Sachar, a paid watchman, Shekila Torah Alav, but the Torah is more lenient, and says he doesn't have to pay in a case where it's in a case of Shvura Mesa, Lokosh came B'Bailim Patur, it's not a Kavachomer, that we should say, and this also is a tremendous condition, that we should make such a dichotomy by the Shomer Sachar. That when is he liable? He's only liable if the Bailim didn't go out with him. But the Bailim went out with him, the animal died or broke or was taken captive. I'm sorry, an animal was stolen or lost, the Shomer Sachar should be potter. If by this price says if by shoyel we create distinction in chiyuv, it's a master is with at that time, he's exempt. So even by Shomer Sachar we should make such a distinction. And this is also a very big chiddush, because we never ever saw before that this concept of shmir b'baylim applies to any other shomer besides the shoyel. And the more this price wants to extend it even to a Shomer Sachar. Okay, so what's the raya over here? So the raya is, if you want to say there's no shvuah by shoyel at all, then there would be no kavachomer. What's the kavachomer? The kavachomer is if by shoyel who's liable on everything. Yeah, the bailim imo, the owner with you is a patur, it's exempt you. So kavachomer by Shomer Sachar is not liable on everything. The bailim imo should be a patur. But if there was a concept, if there was no concept of shvuah by a shoel, only payment, right? Payment or non-payment, I might say, well, wait a minute. Not necessarily. Perhaps by a shoel, the shayla b'baylim is potter because it's more kal, because there's no shvuah at all by a shoel. But by Shomer Sachar, perhaps it's more severe because there is a concept of shvuah by Shomer Sachar. He's got to take a shvuah that in the case of onus, that was an onus, and he wasn't sholech yad, that he didn't himself damage the object. So maybe it's more severe, and maybe taka b'bailim to have the owner with you is not an exemption when it comes to Shomer Sachar. Again, because of its severity, that it has a shvuah, which shoyel doesn't have. Why does it want to make such a pircha on the kal v'chomer? It must be, says Rabbi Zera, that this price holds that there must be a shvuah as well by a shoel. There's a shvuah by a shoel. And that's why that's not the basis of a pircha on the kal v'chomer. You can't say disruption of kal v'chomer that, well, Shomer Sachar is more severe because it has a shvuah. Because shoel also has a shvuah. Where's a shvuah by shoel? But we ever hear such a thing. You know where must be a shvuah by shoel, says Rabbi Zera. My shvuah, and even by Levimo, there's still a shvuah. Did you watch it properly or didn't you watch it properly? So this brisa, which wants to make a kavachomer from shoyel to Shomer Sachar, it's predicated on the assumption that shoyel has no severity over Shomer Sachar. It must be predicated. That Shomer Sachar has no severity over shoyel. It must be predicated on the assumption that there's some shvuah by shoyel. What's a shvuah by shoyel? It says Rabbi Zera, my shvuah. Okay? Now, says more. Now, the next Gemara, everybody goes nuts over. Even the Gemara I just read, everybody goes nuts over. But, so therefore I'm going to learn it my way, in order to avoid the going nuts. They basically no, actually over the next Gemara. So I'm going to learn the next Gemara as being a separate question. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to do a little bit of cutting and pasting of my own. But I'm going to change gears so much less than anybody else. Okay, now let's just take the line, 2 lines, and it says, V'kasha al Adod Rabbi Zera. See those words? Put them over here. That's an introduction to this question. It's difficult to say the following question. And this is really a question based on our Mishnah. It could be based on the Brisa we just read. It could be based on the Mishnah. I'm not sure exactly which one. But same question no matter what. If you're going to say there's such a thing as a Shavuos, it's the Shavuos. You're going to say it requires Shavuos. And this Shavuos would of course be true not just by a Shoel, but also by a Noisei Socher and a Soicher, right? So Nisnei, it should say B'Noisei Socher v'Soicher. It should say by Noisei Socher and a Soicher that there's a Shavuos. What Shavuos should it say? It should say, now take out the words heavy load surcha el tashlumin, we'll put them in later on. It should say, it's chalein nisna b'shol, b'Noisei Socher v'Soicher, the following. And it should by Shoel as well. Shoel im balav imo nishba, ein balav imo yishalem. A Shoel, if its balav is with him, then you take an oath. But the balav is not with him, and he pays. Noisei Socher balav imo nishba, ein balav imo lo yishalem. If by Noisei Socher, if its owner is with it, then he takes a Shavuos. If its owner is not with it, then he doesn't. Then he doesn't pay. Shomer Chinam, and a Shomer Chinam Beit Shabalimimo, Beit Shabalimimo, regardless of whether the owner's with it or not, Nishba, they take a Shavuos. Now, in other words, we should restructure the whole Mishnah, or the Brisa, to tell us all these new dinim, which we just came up with. That there's a Shavuos by Shmir Sheila B'Bailim, and that therefore by Noisei Socher there's a difference if the Bailim is there or not, and by Shomer Chinam there is no difference because no matter what he always takes a Shavuos. All these things should have been mentioned in the Mishnah or the Brisa. Where are all those things mentioned? Yeah, but Rabbi Zeir is an Amayra. He can't be Mechayr, which is not a Mishnah. That's what he's asking. He Gufa. They learned the question is the way they learned the question is it should have said Shomer Socher in the previous Brisa. It should have said Shomer Socher and Soicher. Why is it only mentioned Shomer Socher, not Soicher? And the previous Brisa immediately proceeding that. So they go through all sorts of contortions to understand the Gemara's question. They want to say Soicher, the Yerushalmi holds here, Soicher is like a Shomer Chinam, and that's the basis of the Gemara's question. Very, very difficult question. Very, very difficult. But the way I'm learning it, it's interchangeable. What the Gemara is really asking is that all the statements made, which we just derived from the Chilukei Din of Rabbi Zeira, vis-a-vis a Shoel, vis-a-vis a Noisei Socher, vis-a-vis a Soicher, vis-a-vis for that matter Shomer Chinam, they should all be mentioned somewhere, and they're not. So therefore the Gemara would conclude with these words which appear up above. Have a Lord Surchada, El Tashlumin. It must be that all this is not true. There is no Shavuos by Sheila B'Bailim. There is no Shavuos by Shomer Socher B'Bailim. There are no such distinctions. Whenever you pay, you pay. Whenever you don't pay, you don't pay. We can't be Mechad Shol Shavuos. That's the first conclusion. Okay? Says the Gemara weiter. Now, what we're up to is the Marta. Okay? You said, and this is in some Brisa, we don't know the Brisa. This is good time just says some Brisa. Anytime a Shoel pays, Nosei Socher Nishba. The Nosei Socher takes a Shavuos. This is a quote, this is a Brisa, okay? Now take out the next line, the Gilly Ephraim takes out. Should be Dvarim Shenosei Socher Mishalem. Things which a Nosei Socher pays, Shomer Chinam Nishba. He sets a pattern. Things for which a Shoel pays, a Nosei Socher is off the hook for. That means onus, right? Act of God. And the Shomer Socher pays, a paid watchman just takes an oath is off the hook. Things which a Shomer Socher pays, which is Gnei Baveda, if it's stolen was from him, a Shomer Chinam is off the hook. He just takes a shvur that he wasn't posher. So far so good. Turn the page. Ma'at mistei b'Shomer Chinam shabaylim imo. What about the Brisa? See, we're not finished with what we said here. We're still trying to salvage it. What about the Brisa which said that by Shomer Chinam, What do we say by Shomachina when Baila of Imo? We say according to Rebbe Zeir, of course, the Baila of Imo, there's a dichotomy between Shoel, right? The Baila of Imo depends whether you can make it take you can still make it take a shvuah, right? Even though it's not Masha way in the Chumash, and Rabbi Chanin and Rabbi Lo argue, but Rabbi Zeir holds you can make him take a shvuah. So what about by Shomachina? Shomachina, you can normally make him take a shvuah that it wasn't Posheah. Right? Is that true also by Levimo? Can you still make him take a shvuah that he was not Posheah? Or do I say that no, at that point you can't make him take a shvuah? Now, as I'm saying this over now, I'm thinking it's even a question according to Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Law. According to Chanina and Rabbi Law, there's no such distinction by Shoel. By Shoel, by Levimo, he's off the hook. And you can't make him take a shvuah about the Shir. But by Shomer Chinam, you can still ask the question. Because in Shomer Chinam, the Torah says your whole right, and this gets back to what we said about it earlier, your whole right is to administer a shvuah to him. Maybe you have the right to administer a shvuah to him even when you're present at the time that he's doing the shmirah. That's the Gemara's question. But you lose your right to administer a shvuah to him if you're present at the time. Reads the boy mistake, and the Gemara continues on and says, asks the same variation of the question. According to our Mishnah, whatever halachas they have, whether the owners are with him or not, or are there distinctions? Which really goes back to the Sugi and Amal. Are there any distinctions or not? So Rabbi Ahmed said, Al kol dvar pesha. Al kol dvar pesha means, that's what it says by Shomer Chinam, you make him take a shvuah on any pesha, on any possible pesha. So you know what he was learning that? He's saying even if Baal of Imo, you have the right to make him take a shvuah. Al kol dvar pesha. Anything. What is Al kol dvar coming to conclude? Why did you say Al pesha? Al kol dvar pesha means even if your owner is with him. Now this might only be by Shomer Chinam, where your whole right is to administer a shvuah, or maybe even in the case of Baal of Imo. It says, no, I reject your Rasha. Lo matzinu sheishvas ha'torah ha'gneva v'aveda b'shoel. Did we not find that the Torah draws the equivalency between gneva and aveda by shoel? I forgot what that means. 1 second. By gneva aveda by shoel. In other words, you're liable on both. That's true. Oh, true. I guess lo matzir shishva tar b'gneva aveda b'shoel to shomer sachar. I think that's what it is. Because they're both liable. Gneva aveda b'shoel and by shomer sachar. I think that's what it is. I guess I just glossed over this. I think that's what it is. In other words, they're both the same. Shomachina by Gnei Aveda, there's no difference between Shoel and Shomer Sachar. Therefore, we're going to learn by Shomer Chinam and Noisei Sachar, they're all the same on Shever Shvuya Mesa, meaning that just like a Shomer Sachar, we never find that he has to take a Shvuah if it's broken. No, I'm not sure. I think it's what it means still. That's what it's saying. No, yeah, but it's a question, it's rejection, Rabbi Avin. Rabbi Avin said, I'll call my pesha, you make a Shomer Chinam take a shvuah. Ramona says, not true. What? No, Shomer Chinam is Potter Gneva Aveda.
Right.
A Shoel and a Shomer Socher are Chayev.
Right. But let's try
Moshe learns Rabbi Avin agrees with Rabbi Mona. They both agree. Okay, I'm going to learn Pnei Moshe then. Why not? Okay, so again, I Rabbi calls Bar Pesha. Taka make a dig shvua calls Bar Pesha. Even if by the Bimor, Ramana said, "Lamatir Shishva Satar B'Gneva Aveda B'Shoel." Don't we find the Gneva Aveda B'Shoel and by Shomer Socher the equivalent you have to pay? And we say no matter what, under all circumstances, the Shomer Chinam and Noisei Socher are the same, and you always have to take a shvua on Bar Pesha. So the truth is, it comes out that you have to take a shvua by Shomer Chinam, even according to this Gemara, even by a case where it's Shomer Bailim, Shomer Bailim. You do have the right to administer that shvua. You don't have the right to administer a shvua you made up, such as the shvua which we talked about 45 minutes ago, the shvua that you never had in mind to be going of it, which is a preposterous made up shvua. But the shvua that you were not posher, that you were not criminally negligent in your shmira, that you do have the right to administer. That's what we're saying. Because our called Bar Pesha. And just like we never found any chilukim, you can know it between shoel b'bailim, not shoel b'bailim, l'chiyuv or l'ptur by anything other than by shoel. So too we say that by Shomer Chinam it's the same thing. The chiyuv of shvua applies equally whether shoel b'bailim. Truth is, now I think about it, makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. What I say is very simple. Look, we only find that shoel b'bailim is a ptur by one thing, by a shoel. By Gneva Aveda, there's no ptur of shoel b'bailim, both by shoel and by Shomer Socher. And so by anything else, there's no ptur of shoel b'bailim, not shoel b'bailim. So therefore, it stands to reason that if you're allowed to administer an oath to Shomer Chinam, you're allowed to administer an oath to Shomer Chinam, even if it's b'bailim. Makes no difference. That's what he's saying. No matter what, you can always administer it. Okay? Now, the next Gemara is much harder than I thought. Next Gemara is going back above Mitzvah. Now, I want you to take a look back above Mitzvah for a minute. Take a look back above Mitzvah on page. This is really just for pure B'kiyas. At the end of our Mafkia, which in Bab Mitzvah is page 26. See that? Let's see page 26. You see that small print there? That small print is the next Gemara. This small print is identical to the next Gemara from here to the next Mishnah. So it's just pure trivia. But for some reason that with Gemara, whoever the Chidah put it in over there, even though it's really a Gemara here in Shavuos. Anyway, it is going on the Mishnah back there. The Mishnah, once you're in Bava Metzia, I really want you to see the page before. Page before is down in Machloikas, and I look at this. It brings out two Machloikas, Shem Beisham and Beisila. The second Machloikas is what concerns us. And this is why perhaps the Havmin of the Gemara to administer the oath by Shomer Chinam of did you ever have in mind to steal is because this Machloikas Beisham Beisila. Take a look at the third line of Mishnah. It says, you thought to be Sholech Yad Bikodah. You even thought to be Sholech Yad. Beishamim Mechayvim Beisilo Emrim Eino Chayev. The Shammai says your thought makes you liable. Beis Hillel says your thought doesn't make you liable. Okay? So now, the Gemara, let's go on this mission. Let's go back to our Gemara. My time to Beis Shammai. Back to Shavuos, which is the same thing as what we see over there. My time to Beis Shammai. I'll call Dvar Pesha. I'll call Dvar Pesha even means Adibur Shal Pesha. Now, it's not as outlandish as you might think. It's not just a machshav, it's got to say it. You said, Hili Muchanim Zumel Lishlach Bo Yad. What gesagt, you said it, that's enough to be Mechayevin. Ma'amakayim Beis Hillel, time Beis Shammai. What does the Beis Hillel do with this Svara Beis Shammai, I'll call Dvar Pesha? They learn Pesha, I'll call Dvar Pesha, Tipata Shisholach Bo Yad Ayidei Shliach. Means I'll call Dvar Pesha, means even you yourself didn't do it. You sent your henchman to do it. You were ready to Shomer become liable. Here's a case of Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Aveira. You Sholech Yad, you cast your hand against the object giving. B'kodam, that's enough. Even through a Shliach. V'yosachina Boy, Rabbi Yochanan said, ask, Matama, Yitol Nata? Do you have to actually pick it up in order to be liable? Now, I'm sorry. It's enough to pick it up in order to be considered to be a Sholech B'yad. You have to actually have to move it. That's how we touched up the Gemara we learned about Mitzvah Shaitar Yisrael. There's a different shot here. I think he's wrong. We'll learn it my way. Okay, you have because it's enough to pick it up, and that's a Shliach Sad. But Shliach Sad means moving it from place to place. Okay? So it says Gemara, Tani, we learn Rabbi Yeshua taught us Nishbara, if the wine barrel breaks, Chmitza goes sour, no slow to make kula. You pay, the shomer pays for its entirety, if you sholech yeah. So klumi chmitza, why does it become vinegar? Lo machmas, it shouldn't be kikula, it should be tiltullah. Why does wine become vinegar? Because you moved it. Even if you picked it up, it wouldn't become vinegar. What makes it become vinegar? Moving it from place to place. Don't ask me why, I don't know why. So from this we see shlichus yad is only if you move it, not just if you pick it up. Shmuel Rabbi Eliezer said, shlichus should be shlichus yad. Shneimar Sher Mechinam eno chayev ad sheyachzar. The shlichus yad by Sher Mechinam is only chayev if you actually took something out. If you tapped the wine barrel and took out some wine, otherwise you're exempt. The Veishmul Baikum Rabbi, they asked, Ma'ita Ma'ita, how did you learn? Take out the word Yasef, it's meaningless. Chiser, does he have to take something out? I don't feel low chiser, even if he didn't take something out. Amalesa says, Leisa da shilto. This is not a question. Rabbi Yossi Achina, Yito Nota. He said you have to pick it up, you have to remove it. Ita Temar Lito. So the halacha is like this, says, if you moved it, Api lo chiser. Once you moved it, even if you didn't tap it, you're chayiv. Chiser, however, if you're going to say, oh no, I'm sorry, I messed it up, sorry. If you say that even if he intends to move it, then apilo chiser, then even if he didn't remove anything from the barrel. If you're going to say that he has to actually move it, so I'd so you actually have to remove some, tap the barrel. Now it's either or. Means if you either move the barrel or tap the barrel, took something out, and left in place, those are equivalent shlichus yad. If you had in mind to move it, and you didn't remove anything from it, either of those things, according to Beis Shammai, you'd be liable, because that's how it's called Bar Pesha. According to Beis Hillel, you're not liable. Okay? And also, if the pshat is lito, you had in mind to only if you took it, if you had in mind to take it, you're liable. Then wherever you put it down, you are exempt. In Tamar Natal, because you didn't really take it anywhere. If you had in mind to take it and didn't take it, so no matter where you put it down, I'm not sure why you put it no matter what. I was fuzzy on this back then, I'm fuzzy on it now. But this I understand. In Tamar Natal, if you actually took it in your hand, if you put it back in the same place, then you're potter. But if you put it back somewhere else, chayiv, then you're liable, because you actually took it and moved it. So if you never actually took it, you just picked it up. So then, it doesn't matter when you put it back down again. I don't understand exactly why. But if you actually picked it up, then in order to get out of the situation, you have to put it back exactly where it was. Now even then, if it turns to vinegar, once you moved it, you're liable for it. But if it didn't turn to vinegar, something else happened to it, so then you'll be exempt. Ra'avov B'Shem Yochanan said, Nemar Shmir B'Shem Mechinam, it says Shmir B'Shem Mechinam, the Nemar Shmir B'Shem Mesachar, it says Shmir B'Shem Mesachar, the Lo Dam Yashmir Shtabachov Membeis, Lo Dam Yashmir Shnem B'Shem Mechinam, the Shmir Shnem B'Shem Mesachar, they're not comparable. Shmir Shnem B'Shem Mechinam came into Shomer called Tzorka, if he did all he had to do, Potter is exempt. Shmir Shnem B'Shem Mesachar, no, Ein B'Shem Mesachar B'Gufo. It depends. It's not enough they did all he could do. He has to go beyond that. We check out his capacity. And the way the next few lines you read, I'm going to change it to the way it says in Bometzia and Yerushalmi Shavuos and Ephraim say, Einamrim, well, actually, you could look at Ephraim on the bottom. It says here, Einamrim iloya akasham loya yochol lahatzil. We don't say, if somebody else was there, they would not have been able to save it. In other words, some other weakling. Rather, we look at this specific guy. We look at him, look at him, I'm continuing with what I have in the Messiah B'Shar Teretz Yisrael. El Royno, so, in other words, by Shem Rechinam, we look at baseline Shmir, which any Tom, Dick, and Harry could do. We don't require him to go out of his way. By Shem Mesachar, he's paid. Why have you been paid? You've been paid because you're Stone Cold Harry, what's his name? Austin. Harry Austin, right. So therefore, we want you to be shomer, right? So we look at you specifically and we say, if you could have done it, then you should have done it. If you couldn't have done it, but we look at you yourself. We don't look at generic levels of shmirah. Okay, Rabbi said, we'll have to stop here for this evening because it's late. Hopefully, near to Shem, I don't think tomorrow we're going to finish this, but Wednesday.